Are you ready to cry again over Taylor Swift and sob about the Eras Tour with me? Let's go. The final 2 episodes of The End of an Era have finally dropped, and today I am going to relive episode 5 with you. This episode is entitled Marjorie, and we get to hear so much about Taylor's family and her mom and her grandma, and there's so much new information to talk about. So let's dive right into our recap of episode 5. Welcome to Swiftly Sung Stories, where we unpack the Taylor Swift universe one era, album, and lyric at a time. Think of it like English class, but it's all Taylor Swift and none of the boring stuff. I'm Jen, your Swiftie English teacher, and class is in session, so come on in and meet me in the margins. I had been grouping these recaps into blocks of 2 episodes, but as I sat down to write my thoughts about episode 5, it ended up being way longer than I anticipated. So I'm breaking these up into 2 parts. Today we will recap episode 5, and then episode 6 will come shortly after. But oh my, both of these episodes were incredibly powerful, and there's just so much to talk about. Episode 5 is entitled Marjorie, and as you know, in the Taylor lore, Marjorie Finlay was her grandmother, for whom she named the song that was on Evermore. We open the episode with baby Taylor at the piano being encouraged by Marjorie, who looks so much like Taylor, it's uncanny. Taylor's just pounding away on the keys. She's probably a little over a year old, and Marjorie says to Taylor's mom, "You know what this means, you have to get a piano." And little does Andrea know that the piano is just one thing on a very long list of things she's going to need to do. A piano is just the start. We get our title card, The End of an Era, Episode 5, Marjorie. So we get the sense that once again, we're going to be looking at the fate and destiny and kismet of it all in this episode, especially in relation to Taylor's family, which plays a huge part both in this episode and in episode 6. Now we zoom over to Toronto, where Taylor is set to play 6 shows on the final leg of the tour before going over to Vancouver for the final 3 shows of the Eras Tour. She's sitting at her keyboard and she's coughing. She says if she gets a cold, it lingers for a while. And Taylor, that's because you don't rest. I mean, at this point, she doesn't have the option to rest, but she's puttering around the dressing room. She asks her mom, would you like a coffee from the world's most depressing coffee shop? They're having this hilarious banter, and we can really see where Taylor gets some of her humor from in these discussions with her mom. Her mom is really funny, and it's so cool that we got to see that. There is talk about spatchcocking a turkey, which Taylor kind of giggles at, and the two of them are just magical together. They have such an amazing mother-daughter relationship. I think that we all envy that. We learn that Taylor is including Travis in Thanksgiving because Andrea is making him giant ribs that he refers to as dinosaur bones. So we've set the scene. This episode is all about family, and it's not just going to be about Taylor's family, but right now we are focusing on them. We're getting some clips of young Taylor. She's maybe 12, getting ready for some of her first appearances. And in a voiceover, Taylor says, touring is something that really brings my family together in a lot of ways. For me, part of the Eras Tour is a celebration of my family. Ultimately, I just don't see any of this happening if my family hadn't been involved. I mean, we work together. We're kind of a family business for 20 years. We're seeing a clips of very early touring, hopping around to festivals and state fairs and such, and it is all hands on deck. Her brother is her stagehand, her mom is her stage manager, and her dad is probably behind the camera. And Taylor continues, my parents didn't know anything about the music industry, but they're just like, yeah, it's hard, we know nothing about it right now. We'll get some books and we'll read. Like, it's pretty insane, she says. And what she's talking about here is that perfect combination of privilege, naivete, and just blind optimism that allowed this quote-unquote family business to really take off. Privilege because they have the money and the time to devote to their daughter's dream. Naivety because they don't have the first clue how tough this business really is and what they're getting into. And blind optimism because they just don't see how slim the chances are that this ever works out. But they're going to give it their all. And that's really a testament to how much they love Taylor, how much they believe in Taylor. Very, very few parents will ever devote 1 week to making sure their kids can attain their dreams, let alone devote their entire lives to making sure it happens. But these parents have, and it's pretty remarkable. We see Andrea drawing 13, Taylor's lucky number, on her hand in Sharpie, which she used to do very early on in her career. And now we're getting into clips from a little bit later on, her debut performances through Fearless and Speak Now. And Taylor says, in an industry as cutthroat as the music industry, learning the hard lessons and experiencing ups and downs and triumphs and failures, it was a huge challenge for my whole family. But everybody was so locked in for my whole life. They all banded together to no, she wants this. We want this for her. During the second part of this voiceover, the clips have transitioned to the Eras Tour. So we've kind of seen this whole trajectory of Taylor's career in just this short montage, but focused on her family and how they've helped her get here. And now we hear more from Andrea, who plays a huge role in this episode, and she's going to introduce how her mother, Marjorie, plays a role in Taylor's career. Andrea says, "This tour, it's an honor to work on it. It's a real privilege, and we know that, because none of us would be doing anything that we're really good at doing if it wasn't for what she does that she's incredibly good at doing." Now, during Andrea's voiceover, we're seeing clips of Era's rehearsal and backstage. We see Jan and Cam and Taylor's dad playing foosball in the dressing room, and we see more clips of Taylor with her family, this extended Era's Tour family, because it seems like they all have really become one big family. They're connecting this nuclear family, the Swift family, which this larger family, the crew, the dancers, the management, the stagehands, just everyone. And Andrea continues, "It's incredibly fun, but mostly it's a way for us to be together as a family and sort of honor this thing we've committed our entire lives to." I want to pause for a second and reflect on this, because everything about this family and this career that they've helped build is remarkable. Because think about that kind of bond, that kind of level-headedness that you need to maintain when your life hits this incredible level of success and fame. And it's centered around one person. Taylor is the star, but her family is there to support her. And none of them, it seems, get jealous of this spotlight that's shown on her at all times. They love that she gets that. And they continue to love that she gets that. And this could be incredibly precarious for most families, right? Like, money and fame does very strange things to people, and especially to family dynamics. But it seems that hasn't changed them at all. But think about families like the Jacksons, the Presleys, the Phillips, the Cyrus family. That extreme level of fame and success comes at a cost. And often the cost is family ties and relationships, but not the Swifts. And though Scott and Andrea are no longer married, this family was never separate. They're always together in life and in business. And I think that's a testament to all of them, being able to maintain this tight family unit and just always supporting each other. It's a beautiful thing, really. And it's been so interesting in this documentary to see where Taylor gets her level of emotional maturity and really how she keeps an even keel during this crazy life. I think her family both grounded her from the beginning and keeps her grounded because they're a constant when everything else changes. But that's really down to all of them. They all have to be on board and stay on board during what must be an absolutely hectic and trying life. But they're together. They've always been together. So we're backstage in Toronto, and Taylor's trying to figure out what she's going to do with Gracie Abrams. And we get a little backstory on how the song Us, which was nominated for Grammy, came to be. Gracie was, of course, the opener on an earlier leg of the Eras Tour, and just like Sabrina, her career has since taken off. The Eras Tour was really a launching pad for so many of these openers, which is so cool to see. Taylor says that she went out with Gracie after one of the shows the year before, and they ended up having a lot of drinks. And not only did they set the table on fire, which we see a hilarious clip of, but they came up with this incredible song on a drunken night. So Taylor plans to bring Gracie out in Toronto and mash up Us with Out of the Woods, which Gracie tells us is in her top 3 favorite songs of all time. So Taylor has sent this idea to Gracie in a voice note, and we get Gracie's reaction, which she's just elated and amazed. But while Taylor's performing this little clip for Gracie, recording on her phone, we get this amazing clip of Andrea just rocking out in the dressing room. She says, "I did too." And it's just like Taylor's #1 fan. It's so cute. Then we get to hear from Gracie. It's just insane, she says, that she can do that in her sleep. Where I'm like, I'm going to chop up 2 to 5 songs and make them all flow. And then Gracie's tour manager says, "How does she mastermind that?" And Gracie replies, "I don't know, because she's just a mastermind." Now, Gracie's trying to remember how this mashup is going to go. And she's running through it like me verse, me chorus, Taylor verse, Taylor chorus, me bridge, Taylor bridge. And she's trying to memorize this. And she's so impressed that Taylor can memorize this. And I don't know how, #1, Taylor comes up with this on the fly. And #2, how she can remember it in the moment. And this is something I've been really curious about. We've seen her create these surprise song sets, but when she's up there, is there something written down, or is there someone in her ear reminding her? How, or does she just memorize it? I can't even fathom it. And neither can Gracie. She jokes, "Catch me projectile vomiting on the Eras stage." Now we are back to Taylor, and she's playing clips of Evermore, the title track. We're going to hear a lot of Evermore songs in these final 2 episodes, which is fitting because that album is really all about goodbyes and moving on. Then she mashes up Evermore with Peter, and she jokes, Evermore and Peter, Jesus. She knows that mashup will be an absolute gut punch to the fans, and it absolutely was on Toronto Night 2. Go back and watch that one. It's a tearjerker. Then we hear from Andrea again. She's saying she doesn't know how Taylor does this, and not just the surprise songs, but all of it, the entire songwriting, performing thing in general. She says, there wasn't a creative bone in my body, which Andrea is just not true. But in comparison to Taylor, who is maybe one of the most imaginative, creative people alive, we all look really like bland in comparison. Then we see clips of Andrea plucking at this banjo or some kind of instrument, doing this really like discordant, creepy sound. And she jokes that it's like a soundtrack to a horror flick. This is maybe like during Speak Now era. It's hilarious. And Taylor's just like, oh my God, Mom, stop. She's making this horrible sound. And then Andrea goes on, I was completely opposite. I went into business in school. Now it makes a little bit more sense. We didn't really know this about Andrea before. We hadn't heard much about what her life was before Taylor's career. And so I did a little digging because this got me curious. Andrea Swift did get a degree in business, and she was a, quote, former mutual fund marketing executive before Taylor's career took off. We knew Taylor's dad was in finance somehow, but we never really heard Andrea talk about her career before Taylor Swift Inc. was her career. And when I was researching, Google decided to tell me that Andrea was a homemaker. Google. We got beef, dude. She's not a homemaker. Maybe she was at one point, but she is literally a manager at 13 Productions, and she's credited on most things that Taylor puts out. So, homemaker? No, dude. But now getting this context about Andrea, it all makes a little bit more sense. Like, not only are her parents incredibly supportive and they had the means to make this happen for her, but they had experience, like not in the music industry per se, but in marketing and in business in general. So that was probably a huge help, especially at the beginning. But Andrea, as it turns out, did have experience in the music industry, and we are about to learn. She continues, I don't have a musical background or play instruments, but I do have this sort of intimate knowledge of the psyche of someone who really has to do this. And it's important to note here that she didn't say wants to do this. No, she said has to. It's a need. It's a must. And it seems she understood that with Taylor because of her mom. She says, it goes back to my mother. And we get some clips of Marjorie singing, and Andrea says she was an opera singer. She tells us that Marjorie was always into music and wanted to perform. She studied music in college, and she started out doing live radio in New York. And then as she got married, they moved around. She would star in local operas wherever they were living. We see some old photos of Marjorie, and especially when she's younger, she is the spitting image of Taylor. And what does this photo remind you of? It looks like a mashup of Elizabeth Taylor and Taylor Swift. That's Marjorie. She's also very tall. She has these striking eyes, just like Taylor. And Andrea tells us everywhere we went, she was absolutely beloved. Sound familiar? The parallels are paralleling here. So we're getting into this lineage and how music is in Taylor's blood. She talks about growing up with this kind of mother who's built to perform. And she tells us that on the way home from these opera performances, I would remember she would say to me, Andrea, during that part of a delivery, did it make you want to cry? You know, she was always looking for feedback from an 8-year-old about opera. But we can see the psyche of Marjorie here, right? Because not only does she want to perform and need to perform, she always has to get better. She always has to climb the mountain and make it to the top. She's a perfectionist. And if you wonder where Taylor got it from, it's right there. She continues, it was a beautiful relationship I had with my mom, but it was all with the full awareness that my mom was this person who loved singing, who loved to perform, and that people love. Does that also describe her relationship with her daughter? Yes. It seems that she's given birth to a clone of her mother, and it's because of this relationship with her mom that she recognized that quality in Taylor. Like, she has to do this. She has to perform. So as a mom, she just pulls up her bootstraps and makes it happen. Now we see another clip of Taylor and Marjorie at the piano. This time Taylor is probably about 2. And Andrea says in a voiceover, so it began with my mother, and I think that prepared me, probably better than anything could, for having a child like Taylor. Now we're seeing clips of Taylor performing for her family in the living room, and Andrea is setting up the mic. Her voiceover continues, "Taylor pretty much wanted to follow in my mother's footsteps. She always knew she wanted to perform, and she was always writing her own music without any co-writers." Now we see a little montage of Taylor in her adolescence. She's not even a teenager yet, and she's saying, "This is a song I wrote yesterday," or "I just wrote this 15 minutes ago," or "This is a song I wrote last week." So we can see she was basically born with the ability to do this, to just write and perform. And also her memory was always this good because she's not looking at a notebook as she's doing this just for her family. She's singing a song that she just wrote from memory. Andrea continues, "And then at 11 was when Taylor looked at me and said, 'We gotta go to Nashville. Please, please take me to Nashville.' That is where Faith Hill went." I covered this in my timeline of Taylor Swift's career video in part 1, but Taylor was always a Faith Hill and Tim McGraw fan, and she had watched a VH1 documentary on Faith Hill, and that's where she was really inspired to go to Nashville. So we're in Nashville through these old home movies. They're driving around to different record labels on Music Row, and Andrea's voiceover continues, "Very quickly, I realized this is where my past with my mother was really, really going to come into play. I think Taylor wanted to experience something that she thought was, I hate to say the word, but destiny." There it is. There's been so much about fate and karma and destiny and kismet in this documentary and all the episodes. But here's where we really hear it for the first time. Taylor knew she was destined for this from the beginning. There was something in her that just knew, and she's incredibly lucky to have a family that could help facilitate that. Now we're seeing clips of Taylor performing at the iconic Bluebird Cafe in Nashville. If you are a songwriter who wants to be discovered, this is the place to go. And this is really where it happened for Taylor. It's November of 2004. She's playing at an RCA Records showcase at the Bluebird. She's already signed an artist development deal at this point, but she said she felt stagnant, like she wasn't getting anywhere. But on this particular night that we're about to see a video from, there is someone in the audience by the name of Scott Borchetta. This is the very first night where Big Machine Records was born, with one artist signed to this brand new label, 15-year-old Taylor Swift. This is what set the dominoes in motion this night, both for better and for worse. Borchetta will become a father figure. He'll make a deal with the devil, but then the protege will become the master. Now that Taylor has finally regained ownership of her life's work, showing this clip has particular significance. It's where it both began and where it ended. I do think that at a very young age, Andrea's voiceover continues, we tend to know where we're going in life. And it's good to listen to them and where their dreams are, even at that age. This moment made me super emotional because this is a make or break moment for kids. You tell your big dreams to your parents and they can either listen, like Andrea did, or they can shut you down. And for many kids, this would be the moment that their hopes and dreams were crushed. Your parents could say, it's impractical, or you'll never get there, or you have to do this particular kind of job or have this particular education. Maybe you should focus on more realistic dreams. But if you listen to your kids and you do everything in your power to nurture them, no matter how far out their desires are, you might end up with a Taylor Swift, not a pop star necessarily, but a kid who blossoms. A kid who's comfortable in their own skin and comfortable fostering creativity and pursuing what they want and knowing what they want. Now we are going to zoom over to another little kid's dreams who were made a reality by supportive parents. We are with Amanda Balin in her hometown of Toronto. And Amanda's parents are very similar to Taylor's. They saw this little girl's dreams and they did anything they could to make it happen. So she's sitting around the table with her family. They're looking over childhood drawings and old schoolwork, and she reads aloud this old school project. My mom takes me to dancing, and sometimes my dad does. And they're all laughing, and she says, thanks for sometimes taking me, Dad. Thanks for always taking me, Mom. So this is a similarly sweet moment where we see parents supporting their kids, and especially kids in the arts, which is difficult when, as an adult, you live in the real world. You know the realities and how hard it will be. But doing it anyway and allowing your kid that creativity and that freedom and being open to the possibilities, that's what allows careers like this and people like this. We learn that after the Eras Tour, Amanda is going to finally hang up her dancing shoes. In an earlier episode, we learned that she came out of retirement just to dance for the tour because she'd had pretty severe injuries, So at this point, she was just doing choreo and came on to the tour as a choreographer. But then they asked her to dance, and she said yes, because what an opportunity. But the final shows of the Eras Tour will also be the final shows of Amanda's career. And she's doing it in her hometown, and her family gets to be there, which is very sweet. We are now backstage in the huddle before the first Toronto show. There are 6 shows in Toronto left, and then the final 3 in Vancouver. And the team is already getting emotional. We zoom over to Amanda again, this time in the huddle, and she's reflecting really on what this ending means, both for her and for the whole team. By the way, I love that each Eras Tour family member gets their moment to lead this huddle. It's not always Taylor leading it. And that's also what makes a great leader and a great boss, is allowing everyone to have a voice and creating a space where everyone matters. Amanda says to Taylor, "You are all things kindness and grace." And when she says grace, Taylor kind of smirks like, not graceful. But Amanda continues, "And absolutely my life is different from now moving forward because of you." Taylor's tears start flowing at this moment. Everyone's tears are flowing. They do their F shit up cheer, and they go out to Toronto night 1. We see Amanda's family cheering her on and sobbing. It's very sweet. And now we go back over to Andrea. We see older clips of older tours, and Andrea's voiceover says, "For Taylor, it's always been about the audience, making sure that she felt an intimate connection with them, meeting people, talking to them, hugging them." And I have to say, that's one thing that's really, really singular about Taylor, that she's always fostered a connection with her fans and fostered a community with her fans. Like, it began with this small thing, these secret messages in the liner notes in her debut album, which really drew us in. And now it's blossomed into all of this. It began with Taylor because she invited that connection and doing things like the secret messages and the secret sessions. That's incredible for an artist of her scale to still do, to meet with fans not only personally, but in this intimate way where she's sharing her art with them. She was still doing the secret sessions at Reputation. That's insane. That's singular. That is remarkable. So we get the sense that Taylor has always known that the fans make this all possible. She's so grateful for us. We connected with her because that's what she wanted and that's what she created. But it was this space where we felt like we were a part of it. Most artists don't do this. And I think that's why Swifties are such a unique group, because the tone that Taylor sets, she's framed her music and her lyrics as things that unite us, because she's writing about her own personal emotions, but she writes about it in a way that makes them universal emotions. So she's not just writing about herself, she's writing about all of us, but meeting us in person, that's pretty unheard of for an artist on that scale. And as she's grown, she's of course had to scale that back, both because of COVID and because of security. But they found a way around that. And the way to still have intimate connections with an audience in a stadium of 90,000 people is really using production design. So now we see some older clips of Taylor meeting with fans, and then we get a voiceover from her. I decided that if I couldn't meet with fans in the crowd in the show, I would have to come up with different ways to still give people an intimate experience. So now we're getting into the design of the whole thing, and we meet the man behind the scenes, Ethan Tobin, who Taylor had previously worked with in music videos. He tells us, "I like to build worlds around a storyteller, their relationship with the fans, our relationship with the songs. If every idea that you have creates an emotional response, you are able to make people in the last row feel like they're in the first row." So what he's saying essentially is, if you can't physically reach people, you can't be close to them, then you bring the show to them on an emotional level, so it can still reach them no matter how far up in the nosebleeds they are. Because even if they can't see it up super close, they can feel it. Taylor says, "I wanted to make sure that the show is accessible from every part of the stadium." And then we get to hear more from the team about how they made that possible. We meet Baz Halpin, the lighting and production designer, who's really describing this predicament. You make the stage light up so that even people on the top row can get this incredible view, but then people at floor level can't see that the stage lights up. So you have to get a camera that goes overhead and projects it all into these big vertical screens. So he basically just described how they created this sort of 360-degree view where everyone can see and everyone can feel it, which is a huge accomplishment in big stadiums, but they did it. And it's this combination of lighting and cinematography and these huge screens projecting every angle. It makes you feel like you can see up close even when you can't. And then Taylor tells us about probably the most unique moment on stage, and that is the stage dive. She asked Ethan to pull some wild card stuff. I want there to be a moment where the fans are like, what just happened, she says. The first time we saw that was exactly our reaction, like jaws on the floor. Did she just dive into the stage? She did. So she's about to practice the stage dive for the first time. And the first thing she asks is, I wonder how that looks from the top. It's not, am I going to hurt myself? She's wondering how it looks from the top row. She's always thinking about what the nosebleeds are going to see at all times. She's thinking about every angle, and therefore her team is thinking about every angle. And then we get to see what this looks like in the daylight. And it's actually really cool. Under the stage is this type of lift, like the other platforms, but it's like a cradle filled with like these air-filled cushions. So she dives in, and it's totally padded. And there's like a light that shows her a green light or a red light. Like green means it's safe to dive in. Red means like, wait a second. So we get this lined up. And then it lowers her down after she's jumped off so she can climb off and like, make the rest of her journey under stage to the quick change. So it's really ingenious. Then we're seeing fans' reaction to this stage dive in Toronto during one of the Toronto shows, like as it's happening. And we hear Ethan's voiceover. People scream. It's happening right in front of your eyes. And that creates joy. And that is, I think, what great shows do, make adults feel like children. So that segues really into the storytelling of the tour and what we all felt while watching it, because we did feel like little kids, really, like watching this magical spectacle play out right in front of our eyes. It was like a storybook come to life. And we're going to learn a little bit about Taylor's storytelling in the next segments. We cut to Andrea, who tells us that they wanted this to be the biggest thing they'd ever done, but none of it is possible, she says, without a song and a person willing to sing it. We see a hilarious clip of Taylor in the studio, I guess with Shellback for Reputation. She's just being a big nerd. She's yelling, I love songs, and like making this kind of pitiful, funny attempt at like destruction. She knocks over a chair, and which has like minimal impact, and she like tosses something on the carpeted floor, which like doesn't even do anything. She's just like running around with this giddy, childlike excitement. It's so funny. But that's really the catalyst for this whole thing. It is the excitement and it is the songs and her storytelling and her love for storytelling. That is what makes all of this possible. And then we hear from her. Storytelling for me is one of the key aspects that makes me feel like life is worth living. And we are spliced with clips from the studio for our debut and Fearless and songwriting and recording. And she just continues, it's just that important to me. Crafting a song is just the happiest I ever am. And we knew this because we've seen clips of her just geeking out over the years with excitement when she's in the writing room, but to hear from her mouth is pretty cool. We see some clips of recording Speak Now, and the voiceover continues, if you're in a writing session with me, I'll go into my lyric space, and sort of just like rocking back and forth in a corner, muttering. We see clips of recording Reputation, and she says, for me, it's endlessly fascinating. I never get bored with it. Songwriting happens whether I'm on tour or not, because my life has just always been this kind of free-flowing state where you live it, you feel it, you wonder about it, and you write about it. If you are a writer of any kind, that just hit you really hard. You live it, you feel it, you wonder about it, you write about it. If you have a similar kind of brain that Taylor does, and really like any writer does, this is how we process emotions. Some people process verbally, some people process through like physical mediums by doing things, but writers process by writing. That's why we started writing. That's why we keep writing. It's just a daily part of how we deal with everything going on around us and everything going on inside of us. So we've just gotten this montage of her writing over the years. And she's just told us that her process is always ongoing. Live it, feel it, wonder about it, write about it. And that doesn't stop or start because she's on tour, because she's living her life while she's on tour. So it's different day to day, but she's always got these emotions. And her outlet has always been her songwriting, like no matter what is going on. So we'd already gotten the sense that we were heading toward the making of The Life of Showgirl, since she's been talking about writing while on tour. And then we finally see it. We see Taylor in Sweden, and we get a subtitle, The Life of a Showgirl Studio Sessions 2024. I started going to Sweden in between my shows, she says, and it just felt like the most exciting way to make a secret album. So let me get this straight, Taylor. You're performing a 3.5-hour show 3 to 6 days a week, and then you travel to the next city or country, and you're also the boss of a mega corporation that bears your name, and you're the leader of this whole team. You're simultaneously trying to spend time with your loved ones and rest and recover, and on your off time, you just fly to Sweden to work more. Yeah. Like, whatever nonstop drive she has, can I have that? Like, how is it contagious? Can I get it, please? We see clips of Taylor, Max Martin, and Shellback in the studio. It's just the three of them working on this album. And these are two producers she hadn't worked with since Reputation. So she's reuniting with these people who've been very important in her career, and they're kind of giving her notes on her performances. You can be more violent, Max says, like referring to the way she's singing one of these lyrics. And she says, oh, I can be more violent. Trust me. We see this kind of like pent up rage within her, which is both funny and just incredibly relatable. She says, I was in a place in my life where life felt so full of possibility, and it felt like I was figuring things out. It felt like so romantic and magical and passionate, and I just wanted to encapsulate that feeling on this album. I think you accomplished it, Taylor. You really did. All of the emotions are there. Go back and check out my Life of a Showgirl playlist, because I've gone through every track and the themes of the whole album as well. And it really did capture this mixture of emotions really well. I've always felt like they are my mentors and I'm their apprentice, she says, of working once again with Max Martin and Shellback. And they're so brilliant. And we see clips of them in the studio. And this part was really interesting. They're making sounds with just everyday objects. He's throwing a pillow on the floor, or he's drumming on a liquor bottle, or just clapping or stomping on carpet. Like, they're not just using instruments, which is so cool to see. And like, now I want to go back through these tracks and try to pick out these sounds that they just created. But she continues talking about their relationship. You know they're your peers, but you also look up to them. So we can see it's pretty unique. This is a special relationship she has with them. And she says when she first started working with them on Red, it was like going to the school of pop music. It was like going back to school. For Showgirl, she's done it again. She's gone back to school while also performing on the Eras Tour and flying back and forth to Sweden, which is just incredible. We can see this is around Christmas time of 2024. They're drinking spiced wine in the kitchen, and she continues, I was really ready for that kind of challenge, to go back in with these two people and really try and stretch and challenge myself as much as possible to hopefully make the best album that I could possibly make. Do you remember back in the beginning of the episode when Andrea was talking about her mom, Marjorie, always wanting feedback? This is the same thing. Taylor always wants feedback. She always wants to stretch herself and get better and take on new challenges. She wants to grow. And that's really what the eras are. And that's the impetus for the eras. It's growth and change. That's how she got here. Always wanting to be more and have more and give more. Then we learn that Taylor immediately sends her new music to her mom, which, jealous. But Andrea jokes that like, this is amazing, but also so scary. And she says, because I know something that nobody else knows, and that is a massive responsibility. It's like, no, don't send it to me. I don't want it on my phone. Can you imagine knowing about Taylor's music before the rest of the world? Like, coolest thing ever. But also, yes, scary as hell. Because of the machine, like, that Taylor Swift Inc. is, and who the Swifties are, if that ever got out, terrifying. We see Taylor coming up with the line, but I'm immortal now, baby dolls, I couldn't if I tried, for the title track, which is a great line that just really ties everything together. And you hear just like pop out of her mouth, just casually. Like, how did you just came up with that? It's crazy. Then we hear a little bit about her process. She says, I love it. I love being hyper detailed and having several overarching themes that are woven throughout. And this quote really stuck out to me because as I do this work of analyzing Taylor's lyrics over the past few years, as I pick through these songs and albums and dissect them, you can clearly see all of these themes that are running through her songwriting. Like Showgirl, for example, she started talking about the perils of fame and the ugly side of celebrity way back on Red with The Lucky One. And then she dove into this theme full throttle with Reputation. She talked about the more depressing side of it on Tortured Poets. And now with Showgirl, she like brings it all back together with this theme of like, fame is sometimes terrible, but now I can see what it all was for because it brought me here. So to see her circle around and through these themes is one of the most satisfying parts of her storytelling, because we get to see how her views on these things change over time. That's like her character arc playing out over songs and over albums, and it's so cool. And then Taylor says, I think the fans have really gotten into that obsessive nature of my storytelling too. Understatement of the year. Yes, we have, in so many ways. But the key word here is storytelling. And we're going to dive into this further, why we feel so connected to her and why we feel seen by her. And it comes from a voiceover from Amos, who tells us, I think a lot of people, they feel such a personal connection to her deeply personal writing, the drama that she's been through, the heartbreak and regret that she's shared with people. And I think it must be meaningful to her for that to resonate. As Andrea told us earlier, she's always been about the connection with her fans, and her storytelling is really the medium for that connection. She writes about personal experiences, but through this lens of universal emotions. So suddenly a song about her heartbreak is a song about our heartbreak, and a song about her happiness is a song about our happiness. And that's really the power of Taylor's storytelling. She makes the personal universal. But then we get to hear some fans singing the songs that are personal to them. And we get this amazing montage of social media videos from these incredible singers. So incredibly talented. I can't believe it. I loved hearing you guys sing. And then Amos tells us one of the things that sets her apart from a lot of other people is how she writes. And now we go into another montage of the song Cardigan. And it's splices of these different clips of fans singing one after another, the lyrics. So it's this cohesive performance of Cardigan with all these incredible vocalists. And Amos continues his voiceover. Her writing is personal and it's vulnerable and it's very specific. But in that specificity, people see themselves. In that specificity, people see themselves. This might be my favorite quote of the entire episode because it really lays out why we relate to her story so much. Like, Taylor can write about these very specific situations, like throwing a keychain on the ground, or your boyfriend not showing up to your 21st birthday party, or like feeling like an old cardigan under someone's bed. And although we may never have had that specific situation happen, we might never have had a keychain tossed at us, we have felt disregarded and minimized by someone who is supposed to love us. Like, we may not have had our boyfriend not show up to our 21st birthday party, but we have felt let down and not important. We may not have ever felt exactly like an old cardigan under someone's bed, but we have felt forgotten by someone who once really valued us. And that's what Amos means when he says, we see ourselves in her specificity, because she can take one moment, one emotion, and turn it into something that we can all see ourselves in. And that's the magic of Taylor Swift storytelling, like this uncanny ability she has to make us feel all of the feelings. Now we move away from the fan clips and we move over to Gracie singing All Too Well in her bedroom in 2020. And we've heard what Taylor's storytelling means to the fans and the band and her family, and now we're zooming over to what it means to her protege, Gracie. She says, I can't remember a time existing without her music. Every chapter of my life was marked by an album of hers that came out around the same time. And Gracie touches on the other aspect of Taylor's storytelling, which is that it grows alongside us and it marks our growth. It's never just been one story that she's telling. It's this ever-evolving story that kind of narrates our life as we're living it. And now Gracie and Taylor are together. They are backstage practicing their duet in Toronto. Taylor is still sick, but she's powering through. Gracie comments on the way Us and Out of the Woods fit together. It's just incredible. And Taylor says, the double bridge is going to send me off a cliff. And us too, Taylor, us too. So they're practicing and we get a voiceover from Gracie. How is it that we're singing this song? For me, this feels like a dream. And then we cut to Gracie on the lift about to go out on the Eras Tour stage. And it is a dream. Like, this can't be real life, to sing with Taylor Swift in the greatest show on earth. So they're performing Us and Out of the Woods. And when Taylor hits the verse that reveals what this mashup is, she goes into Out of the Woods. Gracie loses it. Like, she's so excited. She starts like bowing down to Taylor in this very sweet moment. We're seeing some fan reactions, not just to the Gracie duet, but to different parts of the show now. And then we go back to Andrea, who says, I look forward to seeing the different ways that fans react from night to night. You see the tears and the hugging each other, and I love it. For me, personally, watching the show, that moment that Taylor appears, and there she is, that is absolutely worth everything. And what Andrea is talking about here isn't just seeing her daughter on the stage. It's seeing the fans' reactions to her daughter on stage, because that moment when Taylor pops out from under those huge wings, that's a moment where, as a fan, your dreams just came true. And Andrea, at every show, she's watching us. That's what makes it worth it to her. And she continues, it makes me feel like this was my calling in life. Whether it was to Taylor or to my mom, it was to be around someone who loves entertaining and is just extraordinarily talented. It was just like ditto. It happened all over again. So she's circling back to the Marjorie of it all, which is, of course, our episode title. So it's important. What we're about to get into and what we're going to hear a little bit about is what it was like to write and perform Marjorie on the Eras Tour, both for Taylor and for her family to hear this and watch this really powerful performance. So we're seeing home movies of Taylor with her grandmother again. And in a voiceover, Taylor says, she died when I was 13, when I was on a trip to Nashville to try and make it. So I've always just sort of felt like she was seeing this, you know. One of the things that still rips me apart when I listen to it is that she's singing with me on this song. And Taylor had revealed this before, that her grandmother's vocals are featured in the background on that track. If I didn't know better, I think you were singing to me now. And then you hear Marjorie singing to her now. As Taylor says, it's things like that that just make you feel like your whole heart is in this thing. But what she's getting at here with her whole heart is the sacrifice. Her grandmother died while she was away, and I'm assuming her mom was also away with her, as she usually was, so they didn't get to say goodbye because they chose to go and pursue this dream for Taylor. So that's a heavy loss, made even heavier by the guilt that choosing this career meant letting your family down. So I think this is part of why she performs Marjorie on the tour, because it's her way of kind of showing her grandmother, like, I'm sorry I wasn't there, but look where I am now. And look where you are now. You're performing for millions of people all over the world with me. And it seems that fans really got this message, because we started honoring Marjorie right along with Taylor. Andrea tells us they didn't even have lights prepared for that song, but the fans brought them. We turned on our phone flashlights, and Andrea says it just became a very loving tribute to her grandmother. But now we learn it's not only a tribute to Marjorie, it's really also become a moment to grieve and remember, even for the band and the crew. We zoom over to Camila, one of the background vocalists, who says, Marjorie is about Taylor's grandmother, but it's personal to me. And I think that's a testament to Taylor's writing, because it really feels like your own experience. And Camila is about to tell us more about what she's getting at here, what this whole episode has been circling around, which is the way that Taylor tells stories about her own life, and we apply them to our lives. That's the thread that tethers us to her. And Camila continues, I've been performing with Taylor for 12 years, and truly the Eras Tour was a surprise to all of us. I lost my mother in September of 2021. So when rehearsal started, not only did I need music and I needed to be with my band family, I needed to heal. Music is the thing that is most healing to me. And while she's saying this, we are seeing clips of her and the band together backstage, just being this lovely, cohesive family unit and having fun together. And now we cut over to one of the Toronto huddles, and Camila is leading the huddle on this night. I, for the past few years, she begins, have been really learning to accept and lean into that two different things can be true at one time. And last year, that really smacked me in the face, because we started this tour and we were all making memories and falling in love with each other. And I was the happiest I had ever been in some time. And at the same time, I was heartbroken every moment because my mother wasn't here to experience this joy and to see the Eras Tour. She's holding back tears, and everyone is trying not to cry. Like, if you saw me sobbing somewhere, she continues, you'd never known that I was the happiest I had been in a while. And if you saw my joy, it was often that I was pretty devastated. And so knowing that, I just want to, give permission to feel both. Taylor is crying now. They're all just letting the tears flow at this point. And she continues, to be here, feel what we feel, be as present as you can in these next 4 shows. Thank you to all of you. Let's go F this shit up. Whew, she just said so much. So let's unpack this a little bit. The first thing that she's getting at is the guilt that comes with grief. Because you've lost someone you love, you almost feel guilty for ever feeling joy again, because you know that joy, but they don't get to feel that. And the second thing is that accepting that you can feel both. You can feel the grief that they're gone, and you can continue to look for joy and experience joy in your life. Like, both of those things can happen at the same time. They don't have to be mutually exclusive. But the final thing that she's getting at that really ties back to Taylor's storytelling, when she says give permission to feel both, I think that's what the Eras Tour did. It was this collective emotional release where we could feel the joy of the tour. We could feel the grief within the song and within our own stories. And both of those things, joy and grief, they can exist during this 3.5-hour period without any questioning or feeling guilty or like being in conflict within yourself. Because there's so much joy in this performance, and there's so much grief that's encapsulated in these songs and how we relate to them. But having this place where we can meet in the middle and like have permission to feel these things, that's the beauty of it. A place where everything can exist exactly how it is. And not many places or spaces in time can you just exist where things can just be. So Camila's words have just gotten them highly emotional, just like they made all of us emotional watching at home. And they get into their huddle cheer. They're joking that now they have to go in for makeup touch-ups because of all of the tears. They huddle, they break, and now Taylor is on stage on the last night in Toronto, and she's performing, of course, Marjorie. And we get these beautiful wide shots of the crowd in the dark, and slowly all of these twinkling lights pop up all over, and each one is a phone flashlight turned on for Marjorie or for whomever you are remembering. I got chills watching this. When Taylor sings the lyric, "Watched you signed your name, Marjorie," we see a shot of Andrea in the crowd doing this hand gesture, signing her mom's name in the air at the exact same time that Taylor is doing it. So this wonderful family tribute. And then the next line of the song is, "All your closets of backlogged dreams and how you left them all to me." And here Taylor is, this backlog of generational dreams all checked off. Now she's living the dream. And we hear Marjorie's voice. It's this beautiful, cathartic moment. And then we get a shot of Camila singing during this lyric, you're alive in my head." And after she says that line, she looks up to the sky, to her mom, and tears are just welling in her eyes. We get a voiceover from Andrea who says, "My mom's voice is in that song." And she would have loved to have seen all of this, and she'd be so proud. And I think she'd also be really, really stoked that she's now singing in the stadium every night. The song is ending, and Taylor is walking back down the stage to the piano, and the backup singers file in line behind her as she passes them. And as she passes Camila, they exchange this glance that's like, that was heavy, but it was amazing. Like, there's so much in this single look and this sigh between them. Taylor's now addressing the crowd, and I think this is after the Champagne Problems standing ovation, which generally lasts several minutes, and she says, "Toronto, we're at the end of this tour, so you doing that, you have no idea how much it means to me," and then her voice breaks. She sobs. We have rarely seen Taylor break, but she does here, and it seems to finally be hitting her, like this is almost over. But she pulls it together and she continues, "And to my band and to my crew and everybody who's put so much into this tour, into their, I don't even know what I'm saying anymore, I'm just having a bit of a moment, sorry." She cries again, and then she jokes, "It's not even the last show. I love you guys. Thank you so much for that." And the crowd just roars louder than we've ever heard before. And this is a moment where we were projecting or trying to project how much this tour meant to us. Like, we can't convey it in just cheers, but it's all we had. And to see how emotional it made Taylor, like, it made us even more emotional, because at that moment we knew like how much it mattered to her. It mattered as much to her as it did to us. She exits the stage for the last time in Toronto, and now we see her in the car with her brother, Austin. They're sort of debriefing on the show, and Taylor says, "I got emotional. I felt like a dumbass." Austin says, "That was the best part." And Austen is right, because we got to see this real moment of vulnerability from Taylor. It was the most connected to her that we had maybe ever felt, because it wasn't rehearsed and there were no 10 different backup plans. It was this real moment of connection and emotion. She says, "I couldn't put words together, Austen. That was embarrassing. Thank you for saying that, though." He repeats, "That was the best part of the whole thing." And this is where we can see what standards she holds herself to. Like, everything has to be perfect. Everything has to be on script. But what she can't see is that in the moment, we needed that. Like, maybe she needed that, but it was giving permission for us to feel that, like the grief that this tour was coming to an end. She tells Austen about Camilla's speech before the show in the huddle, and she says that's what really got her and stayed with her throughout the show. "We always made eye contact during Marjorie because of her mom," Taylor says, like that moment walking across the stage we get to see in that clip. But to put it in perspective, like, I don't know, the fact that mom did get to see it, and like Travis got to see it, and dad got to see it, and I just felt so lucky, and that's what cracked me. It cracked me wide open, she says. She was upset not just because of Camilla and Marjorie and the end of the tour, but she was crying because of how lucky she feels, like how blessed she feels. And going back to what Camilla said, permission to feel both things at the same time. That's exactly what gave Taylor permission to do that. Like, that's why she cracked. She can be grieving the loss of loved ones, grieving the end of the tour, but she can also feel this like joy and appreciation. So it's a really cool full circle moment that we get to see play out in real time. Then we see a phone call while Taylor's in the car. Her parents are on the phone, and Andrea says, "It's going to be an emotional time from here on out, through to the end." And oh boy, Andrea, you are correct, because we are heading both into the final episode of the doc and the final 3 shows of the Eras Tour. These emotions are getting intense, really intense. And Taylor says, "I'm just so happy that all of this has happened and we got to experience it together. We love you." So the very last line has circled back around to this family thing, the Marjorie of it all, and the Swift of it all. We really learn in this episode what a family business this is. We got a sense of that before, like, we all knew that Taylor's family worked with her in some capacity, but this episode is really the clearest that we've ever gotten to see into the Swifts, and it's a really beautiful way to tie this whole thing together. That's where we leave off in the second to last episode, and as we head into episode 6, grab your tissues because the screen is about to get very blurry for all of us. In my next episode, we are recapping episode 6, in which your girl makes an appearance, a very special appearance. I can't wait to tell you all about it and go through and relive this final episode with you. Quick plea before I sign off. I'm just starting this channel. I put so much work into it and I love it. If you do too, please subscribe wherever you're seeing or hearing this. Send it to your friends, your Swiftie friends. I don't know what I'm doing with the algorithms. They apparently don't like me. I would love to be able to reach more people, but the internet has to show it to you first. So please, please help me out. Subscribe, like, both on YouTube and podcast apps. I appreciate it so much. Thank you to all of you who listen and leave comments. It means so much to me. See you in the next episode. That's it for this chapter of Swiftly Sung Stories. If you enjoyed this deep dive, please don't forget to follow, subscribe, or leave a review. It helps other Swifties find their way here. I'm Jen, and I had a marvelous time reading everything with you. See you next time.